Yeah.
It is 6 o'clock. Welcome to the special meeting of the City of Delray Oaks City Council. Today's Thursday, May 6th, and it's 6 o'clock. Karen, could you please do a roll call?
Councilmember Shirley,
Here.
Councilmember Donaldson,
Here.
Councilmember Gagliotti,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lintel,
Here.
Mayor Kerr.
Here. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Louise, can you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now it's time for public comments. General public comment must deal with matters subject to the jurisdiction of the city and the council that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the city council on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered. There will be a time limit of no more than 3 minutes for each speaker. No action will be taken on matters brought up under this item, and all comments will be referred to staff. Any public comment? All right. Seeing none, let's come back and start with old business. Consider a contract with Economic Planning and Systems, EPS, for an economic study of all city-owned property related to development. I'll turn this over to Acting City Manager Hoyne.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council and guests. As you know, at our last regular City Council session on April 27th, this Economic Planning Systems contract for an economic feasibility study on all city-owned properties was added to this agenda for further follow-up and some additional direction to staff. In February, the staff was directed at the strategic planning session as one of its strategic objectives for 6 months to present development options for all city-owned properties that focus on economic feasibility and opportunities. In March, at the March 23rd City Council, this item was introduced as part of just an information item to give background and tie it into the 6-month strategic objectives. It was then placed on the April 27th Council meeting for action. Council requested a little more information, specifically a copy of the contract and the official scope of work, and they requested that we add additional items to the scope of work. That has been done, and it's here tonight for action and direction to staff. I will turn it over to David Zender, who is here with us tonight, and he can give you just a little bit of background and an update on Council's direction and the items that they wanted to see included in this contract. David, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Good evening, Mayor Kerr, members of the City Council. Nice to see you again. And yes, I thought that was a very productive session we had last round. And I thought we received a lot of really great comments and suggestions. There were 2 additions that we made to the scope as a result of your comments and suggestions. Primarily, those are the consideration of ground leasing. So that is, I think, a really interesting and important component in terms of retaining strategic property within the city's portfolio for long-term as a long-term asset. So certainly we can look at that, and we know that there are certain residential products that can work on a ground lease. And so we will take a hard look at that and give you our thoughts about pros and cons of using a ground lease approach versus fee simple disposition. The second addition was the notion of examining tools and techniques that can be used to build housing that is affordable to what we call the missing middle. This is actually a really important topic. We've been doing a lot of work on this, and so I thought that was a really sound suggestion. So those basically evaluate those two elements throughout the overall scope of work. And other than that, it's largely consistent with the last city council meeting agenda. So we did bump the budget a bit. We took the total to 19K for EPS and 6K for Denise Duffy and Associates. And that takes us to 25K. And we feel that we can do a very good job of evaluating your assets with those resources. I think that is, it lays the framework for a good, concise, and informative study that I think is going to be very helpful and informative. So with that, we feel very good about launching into this very fast-paced analysis. As mentioned, it would be probably, I'm going to say 4 weeks from, say, beginning of work, and that could be as early as next week, to the first draft. And then we would allow a couple of weeks for some back and forth, taking comments, adjusting accordingly. So with that, happy to discuss it further or take other questions, but feel that we are very close to being ready to go on this and looking forward to it.
Thanks, David. So let's go to the council. Ms. Lintel.
Thanks, David, for the update. And I feel that this is a necessary item for us to procure this, the services in order to determine exactly how we want to go with our development of city-owned properties. I also think that adding the additional items that you did tonight, that I think it's feasible to add another dollar amount to the contract. And I think this is fair and equitable. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gagliotti.
I don't have anything more to add than Councilmember Lintel's comments. So I agree wholeheartedly and think this is money well spent.
Okay, Mr. Donaldson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was supportive of the original document, and I think these two items that were added are very appropriate, and I support that. The looking at the lease, and then also what Councilmember Gagliotti brought up before in the last meeting, looking at that missing middle. So I'm supportive of this document. Thank you.
Ms. Shirley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, I think it was the mayor who mentioned the missing middle the last council meeting. First of all, thank you, David, for being here and for presenting this. I have to say I was taken aback a little bit in terms of the purpose, which it seems like number one, it says provide information to the developer candidates responding to the city's forward parcel request for qualification. So it looks like we're spending money that's specifically for developers, which, when we went through our strategic planning, the original purpose, as I understood it, and as the way it sort of reads to me, is that you're educating the council on ways that we can use our land in the best way. And I know a lot of us ran on sustainability, and that's not mentioned in this economic analysis at all. I'm not a developer, and so I need sort of a 30,000 foot view, as opposed to this like really fine detailed description in terms of like what is needed in our area. So I think the purpose of this study isn't exactly what I was looking for. And I'm sorry that that didn't come across before, but as I see the details, it seems to me again that we're taking this information and we're feeding it to developers, which that's not what I want to do. I want to be able to understand. Again, I'm not a developer. So do we build a Trader Joe's or do we build a boutique hotel? Like, I want to know what's going to be most beneficial. How much housing should we build? Should we, these are like, again, I need very kind of basics. And so are we, I guess And then again, the price, like the cost went up on for DD&A as well, but it seems like the things that they're doing stayed the same as last time. So I don't know why that budget increased. I understand you added other tasks to the study, and so I can understand why that would increase. And then again, the community questionnaire, it sounds like it's all going to be city driven. And at this point, I don't really see our city having the person power to push forward a survey and analyze the data. And so I feel like I don't know how much that task is costing us. I suppose I could look at your previous breakdown of costs, but it seems like I'm not sure if that's even reasonable to do within 4 weeks in the state that our city is in. So I guess what I'm saying is I do have some apprehensions. Again, I think it's important to look at this. I want to know what's the best way we can develop our land so that we get the most bang for our buck, but then we also do it in a sustainable manner. And so I want to make sure we get that information from the study. And so again, parts of it I agree with, and other parts I'm having a harder time with. So I'll end there. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I concur with what Ms. Shirley was saying. I was very surprised that the number one purpose of this study was to provide information to a developer. It comes down for me to perception. Why are we spending $25,000 on information that will be going directly to the developer? I'd also like all of us to remember as we move forward our discussions and the actions that we take have to be community oriented. We're contemplating spending $25,000 on top of the $150,000 planning budget. And it did strike me, there's a lot of information in here about informing developers and things like that. So for me, it's always been about community input, and this does not meet the mark for me, I'm afraid. So on that, I'd like to go out to the public and hear what they have to say, and then I'll come back to the council. So any public comment? Ms. Vecchioni. You're muted, Patrice.
Thanks. Until there's a general plan for the city, this is all irrelevant. We need to know where we're going as a city. This is putting the cart before the horse. And I also agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Shirley and Ms. Kerr. The community comes first, not the developers. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Krieger.
Hello. Let me turn it. There we go. Turn it back on. All right. Yes, some of the same concerns. Observations. I'm a little confused why we would share any what would seem to me to be proprietary type information for the city that we're paying for with developers. So I don't quite understand. Maybe that can be explained. I don't quite understand why we pay for something and then hand it over to developers. They need to be taking care of that themselves. They're the ones that are supposed to be figuring out if it's going to pencil out. The sense of this is still we're rushing. I mean, I talked about rushing to get this done in 4 weeks. We rushed before and we ended up with a big lawsuit that we still trying to pay off. So, again, the lawsuit wasn't because of the economy crashing. That just caused the project to be not feasible economically. But if we rush, that the way you avoid lawsuits is you get lots of good buy-in from the public, and we're rushing again. And and people are going to wake up and go, "Hey, what's happening?" And we're not, some of them aren't going to be happy, and we're going to find ourselves having to deal with a lot of unhappy people. If we slow down and take our time and do the proper outreach, we'll get everybody on board, or at least most people on board, and at least everyone gets heard, so they can't complain. But it seems like we're really rushing again on an awful lot. So that's all I got to say. I just unclear about the sharing our with the developers, and I'd like to just be measured in this. There's no rush. It's a race. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Getzel.
Yeah, good evening. I have an issue also with the wording, and I think that's maybe semantics, and maybe I don't know if it's time to rechange the wording in the contract and make it clear that this is for the city and not for the developer.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it should be for the city. There's no doubt that it's the city that needs this information to make an informed decision if and when they talk to developers. I agree also that 4 weeks seems a little rushed to do everything that they intend to do thoroughly. I do disagree with Ms. Vaccioni that this is putting the cart before the horse, because I really do think that knowing what we can economically do legally and appropriately on the property would definitely help develop the general plan. So, but I agree with I've not read the contract, quite honestly, but I I think that the wording could be better written, and maybe we do a tweak on the wording of the contract and make it clear that it is for the city and not for the developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Any other public comment? So I would like to ask all of you, if you see a hand raised and I move on, please correct me, because I believe at the council meeting I missed a hand. All right, I'm seeing none. We'll come back to the council. So I would like to see any and all references to the developer taken out. And I would also like this contract, the funding to be taken out of the current planning budget line. Those are my comments. Ms. Lintel.
Yes, I would like to see the references being made to the city rather than to the developer. Thank you.
Okay. And John.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually like to hear from Mr. Zander, and maybe he can describe why that reference is made. I mean, it's very clear to me, actually, that the mayor and Councilmember Shirley are not developers. And I think a lot of the questions and the concerns come from that not knowing and never being through the process. And unfortunately, being a developer, the only way you can't go to school for it. You really can't read a book about it. The only way to become a developer, or the only way to actually to do this, is you have to go through it. And that's what jurisdictions do. And generally, when people come onto the, when they're elected onto councils, they generally have spent time in other other roles in the jurisdiction, like planning commission or other capacities where they have gone through some of this process. So while I understand where some of that concern comes from, I'm frankly not as open and empathetic to, if you guys don't understand development, that we stop everything and we just freeze what the city does until you guys catch up. I mean, really, frankly, it's on you. It's incumbent on you guys to figure out and ask questions and get information. I mean, that's generally the way I feel about this. But why don't we hear from Mr. Zander and why he chose the language that he did, and then also describe so that our two council members who have never done any development understand kind of where this process is and how it all kind of fits together.
Sure. So first of all, it's not the intent that that we would prioritize the developer feedback over the community feedback. We can reverse the order of those two items and reflect your prioritization. The reason that the developer, to back up a little bit, we are in the middle of a developer selection process. We have two developers that have responded. They're both in good standing, and they've both been checking back with the city on a regular basis. And the primary question that we get is, how can we make sure that as we go through this process, that we have the community's interests in mind? So as we think about how to develop this, how to
David,
propose,
sorry, David, I lost you halfway through there. I don't know if everybody else did.
No,
Nope, you heard it all? Okay.
yes, I did.
okay, I can start over again.
Just, I'm sorry, my internet is unstable. Could you just like bullet point? You were coming in and out for me.
Okay.
Sorry.
So just to put it very succinctly, the developers are keenly interested in what the city would like them to do. They're looking for input from you. They want to make sure that everything that they do, everything they think about, all the uses that are being considered, and the development patterns, the land use patterns, the urban form, they want to know what is the city's preference. It's really important to them to have that certainty. So for example, if the development would entail additional commercial uses in Delray Oaks, should those uses be clustered with residential development up on the Fort Ord piece? Or should we deflect those down to another parcel or position that is more accessible or perhaps clustered with other uses more available to the rest of the community? So they're keenly interested in understanding all aspects of what the community is looking for. And then there's some technical information here also that helps them to understand sort of the outlook as related to those community, not only the community desires, but the possible order of magnitude of other commercial uses that may or may not be appropriate on the Fort Ord site, but it's coming from the city in terms of here's an outlook as far as an envelope of uses that we can either put on the Fort Ord piece or we can put them somewhere else in the city. And the one thing I would say about development in these processes is unknowns are really bad for the process. So you don't, as a developer, want to have big uncertainties coming into a process like this. If there's more risk as a result of having unknowns, then they have to deal with that risk, and it's something that they have to work through. But wherever you can, the alignment of interest between a city and a developer is to take as much risk out of the equation as possible and to all be rowing in the same direction, which means that all things being equal, that developer will seek a lower return on the property if there's less risk inherent in the overall development project. Okay, so we're getting into the weeds now, but this is the discount rate. And so if you're thinking about future cash flow sums and there's a higher risk in the project, then you're going to discount those future cash flows at a higher percentage rate than you otherwise would to offset the risk that's inherent in the project. So, long story short, this is a way of basically vetting development concepts and getting the developer on board so that they're synced up with the community. And they very much appreciate this gesture. They're going to do a lot of work. hundreds of thousands of dollars of analysis, you know, of various types. And, you know, once they're selected, they'll have to really go the extra mile to work through all of these. This really just gets them teed up in terms of the large, big picture expectations. So that's why it's important to basically feed back to the development community. Happy to reverse the order of those, happy to add a little bit of explanation. I need to, there were 1 or 2 typos that I noticed before the meeting, so I'm going to fix those in any case. So I can add a little bit of language at the front end that basically explains that a little bit. But I think it is an important step.
One question I have with this is that, would it be, David, would it be possible, and maybe I asked this to staff and some of the other council members, can we authorize tonight to go forward so that we can kick off and start the effort, knowing that, you know, we could reverse the order, we could change basically the way the scope is going to be executed, and we could even change some of the language in the scope, but getting some of the initial lift, the initial work started, kicking off, you know, the onboarding and start making some of the initial calls. Would authorizing tonight, would you be able to kind of work in that spirit?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you know, the city is a great client and has been, you know, a great partner over the years. So I have no problem doing that. I did want to also just respond to the question about Denise's budget. We rounded up a little bit. There's a little bit of extra discussion here about sort of affordability and land trusts and so forth. I'd like her to be a second pair of eyes as we work through some of these recommendations. So her original budget was just barely, you know, sort of edged up a little bit, not very much. She actually didn't want any increase. I increased it of my volition, but it was a very small amount. And then finally, regarding the survey would not take place until after the economic analysis is complete. So those two things don't go in parallel. Okay.
Okay, great.
And regarding the survey, I have some ideas about that, and I should probably take those offline and vet those with the city manager before we get into that. But I do have some ideas in terms of things that can be done relatively inexpensively. So I think that, excuse me, there is a possibility of bringing on a person in a very narrow capacity to assist the city if the city doesn't have the capacity, the bandwidth to basically send the questionnaire out and take it back and tabulate results. So I think that could be done for probably about $5K in terms of getting the additional horsepower on that front.
Okay.
Ms. Lintel.
Yes, I feel that if we keep postponing this and postponing this, we could lose the potential of the current 2 developers that are interested in working with the city. I also feel that the city and the developers, whichever developer we choose, work together. Because if the developer doesn't have any idea what the community wants, they don't really know if they want to be a part of this or not a part of this. So I think this is a key to the basics of moving forward. Thank you.
Ms. Lintel, or I'm sorry, Ms. Shirley.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with Ms. Vecchione that we are putting the cart before the horse. If these developers really want to work with Delray Oaks, they'll be there when we've collected our information. Again, we haven't done a general plan update. So, so things in here when it says like that we are the expectation for forward parcel is residential, or talking about meeting community build out objectives. Who's writing those objectives? Where are those objectives coming from? I feel like I understand, Councilmember Gagliotti, that you're right. I'm not a developer, and I understand that you are. You have more knowledge in this, but why can't you afford me the ability to learn? I feel like you're cutting me short, and I don't like that. We're equals here. And so I also believe that our community, this is information for our community, and they are not developers. There are probably some developers out there, but they, in general, they're not. And so we're getting this information for our edification, for their edification. Just like these developers want to understand what our community wants, how does our community even know what it wants if we don't understand? Should we build 20 houses? Should we build 200 houses? What's most economical? Again, do we build 5 hotels? Do we build 1 boutique hotel? These are some of the questions that I have. And, again, they're higher level questions. They don't require a ton of detail. And so for me, I'd really not be comfortable moving forward until we have it clarified. And if we're going to have surveys done by someone else, then that survey portion should be taken off of this contract, and that should be done separately. So I just want to be really clear and thoughtful as we move forward. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because we'd be listening to the public. We'd be helping ourselves. And I just think it's the smart thing to do. And I'm willing to work through this and see what parts maybe we could initially start on, because again, it's edification for the council, and I'm interested in that. I want that. So I'm willing to go there, but I'm not willing to just start on this full force. So thanks.
Ms. Lintel, did you have something else?
Yes, I did. I feel that this will enable the public to know what is feasible for development on each parcel and all. And I feel that before we can move forward, we need this survey done by which is included this contract. And so I would certainly like to see this go ahead and get this process underway so that we can move forward. And thank you very much.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I agree with Mayor Kerr and Councilmember Shirley that public outreach and a few of the public members of the public that commented about community outreach and making sure the community is informed. And I feel as though this document really will answer a lot of questions, a lot of the questions that Councilmember Shirley had, a lot of the apprehension maybe that you're feeling or that the public is feeling, because the document will do the analysis to give us the best idea how to use the property that we have available to us, whether it's housing, whether it's retail or commercial. This analysis is going to give us those answers to that, and it'll give us and the public a better idea of how to use those properties. It also allows for the community input up front to kind of even give a better idea of, based on what analysis has been done and what is determined to be best use, that we've got the initial public input that can give that big picture that David was talking about, that can be given to the developer to further refine it and allow them to do a very robust outreach even from that point to narrow it down even farther. And it's in their best interest to do that. And they're not going to do something that we don't want them to do. And I just think this first step is very critical, and I think it'll ease a lot of those concerns that I'm hearing. So that's my input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to ask Jeff, where is this funding going to be coming from?
This will be a line item in planning. It'll either be spread out over this fiscal year and next fiscal year's planning budget, or it'll transfer into next year's planning line item. As we develop the budget, we've already had conversations. Mr. Zender and I have talked about that, and he understands we're right at the end of the fiscal year, and we've had a busy year with planning, and is willing to work with us in any way that we need to accommodate.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say I don't appreciate my intelligence being insulted. We are a policy board, and we don't all have to have construction or development backgrounds. We all come to this with a variety of expertise and roles, and our job is not to be the developer. So that said, I have constantly been hammering that we need public input. And I have also been very clear that the developers will be there, and we as a council and a community have to come forward and figure out what we want before we bend over backwards for the developer to have whatever information they need to be the winner of the two. So yeah, I'm not happy with this. So any other comments, any other suggestions?
I'll make a suggestion. I'm actually going to make a motion. I say we adopt the resolution as it's been revised with the changes in the budget, and then also incorporate the language changes that have come up from both the public and from basically unanimously across the council, and have Mr. Zender work on an execution schedule that's more comforting to I think the rest of the council and the public.
I'd second it.
Ms. Shirley.
Yeah. First, I just want to say that I feel like if a developer is a large part of the public visioning, they can very easily make it so that it works well for them, right? I mean, they're always going to be looking out for their best interest, always. They're never going to be thinking, this is what's best for Delray Oaks, right? It's going to be what's best for their bottom line.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Gagliardi, do you feel otherwise?
Yeah, I do. This is exactly, I do. This is exactly the narrative that's out there, and it totally comes from never having done this. And I completely understand that, the mayor, I'm not discounting the mayor's intelligence or her competency or her ability to learn this, but it is something that we are more than a policy board. We're actually in this role, we are looking to develop lands on our and other jurisdictions do this. Marina went through this, Seaside does this, all jurisdictions do this. And it is a skill set that people in this role generally have to have. They don't have to have the expertise. They don't actually have to have been developers, but they have to understand the process. And that's what I'm trying to say here, is that so many of the questions and the concerns that I keep hearing are really founded in I don't understand the process. And I'm more than happy to help it, but really we do have these consultants that are here that are helping us guide us through that. And this document does exactly that. This document is exactly what, well, I won't say it's, I feel this document is exactly what you are looking for, but you're having a difficulty being convinced that the document is doing that. And I personally feel that that's just in just a misunderstanding of the process. You're going to get it. Believe me, you are going to be one of the best people on this, because you're going to drill into everything and read these documents and read these all the minutia far greater than generally I do. But if there's any way that I could kind of just convince you that just go through the process, it's really the only way to learn it. Is you just have to go through it and see it. There are plenty of exit ramps in this thing. If we see the developer going off, or we just don't like the developer, we'll pull the trigger and we'll get them out of here.
Council member, let me go through the process. Then if you're saying I just need to go through the process, let me go through it. but in a way that feels comfortable for me. Because when I say the developer, when they drive the visioning process, it's only going to benefit them. That's not me coming up with that solely. That's me talking to other people in other cities.
I understand
that have gotten in trouble, that have said, don't let that happen, right? So this isn't just coming from me. I have done a little bit of research and I understand. And so I'm trying to protect the city. I'm trying to protect our community. And again, I'm not saying I don't want to move forward with anything. I'm just saying, let's slow down and help me to understand, right? I mean, again, there's parts of this that I could be okay with. Going to developers and real estate people and find out exactly what's the best retail. I don't know. Again, I need higher level initially. Like I need a baby step. So if you could just afford me that, and before I approve a document that seems like it has a lot of edits, I'm not comfortable voting it in until I see those edits. Because again, that was the whole purpose of not voting it in last time, is because we needed to see edits. And now we're seeing more. And David, again, I'm deeply grateful for what you've done, but it helps me to internalize and figure this out. So thank you. And David, I saw your hand. Sorry, Mayor.
It's okay.
Is it okay if I just say a couple things? So the edits are, there's two very minor typos that I found. The very minor, meaningless. Those are the only edits I was speaking of. I'm very happy to, I hear what you're saying. If you want to give co-equal status, or even put the majority of the origin of the idea behind community information, I'm fine with that as well. I don't think it would be your intent to basically hide this information from the developers. So, I think this will be public information, right? So they will get the benefit of it. It really doesn't matter what that preamble, those two, sort of rationales. I mean, obviously it's important as to where this all originated from. And it was really both things, but I'm very happy to acknowledge that the community comes first. I think there's no question about that. So in terms of establishing a direction and a sort of an overall lead in that sort of explains why we're doing this, I'd be happy to wordsmith the first component there to accomplish that.
I would like to suggest that any reference to the developer be taken out of this. I mean, I don't know how I can rationalize this kind of cost to the community when there's so much emphasis on the developer.
Yeah, I call for the question. I mean, we can, if this vote fails, then we can go back and we can open this discussion back open. But I call for the question. There's a motion's been made, second's been made. So we, as a council, let's vote on it, see where that goes, and then we can open back up.
Karen, can you please reread the motion as you understand it?
Councilmember Gagliotti, to approve with revised edits. I'm sorry, I've taken minimal notes. Certain language changed and wanted it to include an execution schedule.
No, and I'm saying that let's let Mr. Zender come up with an execution that meets the spirit of the council's concern of public input prior to anything else.
Ms. Lintel?
Yes, I feel that this resolution of this agreement to work with the David Zender and Denise Duffy, that is part of the learning process, Kim, because they will do the research to find out what is appropriate for each piece of city land. And that is important in the road to development. And so I feel that by signing this contract, it will have started to educate you, help you understand and all that you are asking for. And also, in addition to what Karen said, I think John's motion was to also increase the budget for this project. Is that true, John?
Well, no, I'm just saying that I'd like to go ahead and approve staff's recommendation, but I'm trying to incorporate some of the concerns that we heard from the public and from the council. And the thing that we heard from the public was, one, the language, is that the language, and that's just the language. It looks as though it's being written for the developer. I want to address that. I don't agree, but if we can make that quick change, I'd be more than happy to have that. And then the other was there's a concern of Ms. Vecchione, I think, used it cart before the horse. I know she was referring to the general plan, but what's very, very important, an important component of this scope is the public input. We want to emphasize that. And if Mr. Zender can do that work in ahead of, and that will inform him in the rest of the work, then please, can make his project schedule that way. I want to give him the flexibility to do that. He's heard what our concerns are. I'm just saying he's a good consultant. He's been working with the city for a long time. He knows it. I want him to have the flexibility to craft the scope and execute the scope to address the concerns of the community and the council.
So, John, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So what edits exactly would you like? I mean,
I'm leaving the edits up to Mr. Zender. He's
okay.
I say accept it. For me personally, I think I will accept the staff report as is. But what I want to include in this motion is the ability and the flexibility for Mr. Zender to incorporate the concerns that he heard.
And you were also asking to make sure that the component for public input is, I'm sorry, because I understood Mr. Zender will not be doing any of the public input or survey. So I'm just asking for clarity on what it is you're asking him to do.
Mr. Zender can address that.
I want to emphasize that the much of the content, the questions for the community would arise out of the economic research. So I would imagine that there may be other questions that you and others would like to inject into the survey, and that's fine, 100%. But I think I just want to say that our role in the survey would be to generate much of the economic-based content, so that we're providing the city's citizens with a realistic notion of what land uses are stronger versus weaker, what can be done in terms of affordable housing, sort of just giving people a little bit of information to start with, and then in the questions emanate from that to elicit their preferences, concerns, etc. So the changes, just while I've got the mic, the changes that I'm anticipating making would, just to be clear, would be at the front end where we're talking about sort of the reasons for the study. I would just tweak that approach a little bit to make it very clear that the primary reason for the study is to help the community. Okay, and I can tone down the discussion about the developer and so forth. So that would be the primary change. I haven't anticipated a lot of additional changes. I will take a careful look at the schedule and perhaps work with the city manager to make any sort of adaptations as necessary there. But this is a short study. This is a 4-week study. It's not meant to be an 8-week or 12-week, 6-month study. This is a concise evaluation of opportunities and constraints of city-owned property, and we're going to do everything we can for a limited budget and limited time to provide you sort of the best advice possible given the data. We can, and it will be at a high level to Council Member Shirley's request. This is high level stuff. This is to say, Do we have a market for hotels? Yes or no? Do we have a market for retail? Yes or no? What kind? These are questions that will be important to provide. We need that information so that we can match up these economic kind of demand expectations with the supply side in terms of what do the parcels offer up? What does the topography suggest? What is if there are easements or other constraints, how do those affect uses? So it's a high level, quick opportunities and constraints evaluation that will give you the information you need to reach out to the community and get some input. And my thinking is that gets you quite a bit further along in terms of a comfort level, moving on with the next steps. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Ms. Shirley, you had your hand?
Yeah, I guess I just really want to see the document complete with its changes before I vote for it. It's not that I don't trust David to make those changes, but I feel like, if someone was coming into my house, even though I trusted the contractor, I wouldn't just say like, sure, go ahead and get started on work without really looking at the final contract. And I just think that's the smart thing to do. And I realize that it would be putting this off a little bit more, but if these changes are easy to make, then let's bring it back.
Ms. Lintel.
Yes, David Zander has worked with the city and has proven himself for many years. And I don't see any reason to doubt him at this point, that he will incorporate exactly what we've asked him for. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, so Karen, if you could do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Shirley,
No.
Councilmember Donaldson,
Aye.
Councilmember Gagliotti,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lintel,
Right?
Mayor Kerr.
No. So it passes 3-2 with Kerr and Shirley dissenting. So on that, we're going to move on to closed session. And I want to see if there are any public comments on the closed session item, conference with legal counsel, review new hire report and recommendations. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go into closed session. And if you'd like to wait, if the public would like to wait, please do. We'll report out. But otherwise, we will see you on May 25th at 6 o'clock. Mr. Lorca, would you report out, please?
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to the one item on closed session, the city consultant provided an update to council and council provided direction to the consultant, but no reportable action was taken.
All right, thank you. So again, our next meeting is Tuesday, May 25th at 6 o'clock. On that, we're adjourned. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you all. Good night.
Bye.